Welcome back to another episode of Breakneck, where two founders, two kind of product-oriented people talk about the challenges of building new companies and new products in the era of AI and all the changes that are coming. I have with me Ian. And Ian, I want to start with a bit of a quote. Sam Altman said, and this is more maybe FUD, he said, like, if you are trying to compete with OpenAI and building models against us, you're going to fail. But the test that he gave, which I think is a really powerful and insightful, if every time OpenAI comes out with a new model, you're happy about it because your technology gets better, you're building the right product. So I think it's a lot more complex than that, and than just pure, some one-dimensional AI power. But what is it like for you building technology on top of kind of the fastest changing technology and adoption and its whole new models and mental models? What is that like for you each week, being worried that all the stuff you did last week or last month or last year is going to become obviated?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like I say this every week. We're in a new world, and as a sort of a product-minded person, the thing that has changed so much is the innovation cycles, right? It used to be in the olden days, software was like an annual thing. You go down and buy a new box from Office Depot. Now it's just so fast, and it's hard to kind of abstract yourself enough to be able to see how sort of where the puck is going. And you kind of illustrated it, or Mr. Altman illustrated, right? It's happening just so quickly. So at a point, it was the underlying technology that was changing, the foundational models, but the foundational technology. And now you're seeing, like last week, was it last week? I can't remember now. Anthropic came out with Claude's Code. Another just example of, oh my goodness, now, the cursors of the world are probably pretty nervous now that this thing has come out. It's just happening so quickly. So creates a bit of anxiety for me as a product-minded person, a product leader. But the sort of the antidote or the answer to that is really, really, really have to skate towards where the puck is going, and the puck is going faster than it ever has been going before. So I'm not going to divulge, what that means for us as a business, because I think there's competitive advantage in that.
Yeah.
We said it last week, actually, in the episode. I think sort of the mantra is work on really, really hard things. And guess what? They're going to get easier over time. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to have to make your own strategic bets as to where the hyper, so not just the foundational guys like the Anthropics and the ChatGPTs, but the hyperscalers too, right? The AWSs and the Microsofts. You got to work out where you think they're going to head, and find the place that they're least likely to head. And we have a pretty strong opinion for our business where that is. Right now, when I talk to people and say, this is what we're going to do, they're like, oh that's stupid. You're never going to be able to do that. But I believe we really are. And it's kind of what used to be a 10-year vision is now a 24-month goal.
Yeah,
I hope we have it right, but I don't know.
I like your Wayne Gretzky, don't skate to the puck, skate to where the puck is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you characterized your experience of that is do things that are harder than you thought. And I think like it's important to bring optimism back because there's so much terror, like this awe plus terror. How do you be optimistic in that? Which I think is part of like, as a founder, you can't like build a product. You have to like be excited every day about building a product, and then you could build a product. And the idea that, like we had things that we thought were ridiculous that you can just go do now. And if anything, you should just be even more aggressive.
Yeah. I mean, I've been talking about sort of quicksand versus bedrock.
Mm-hmm.
As we kind of got up to speed on AI, we'd say, oh, that's amazing, we could do that. And we realized we're actually on quicksand in the sense of, you're not thinking about that right. In 6 months' time, AI will be able to do that. That's quicksand. Find bedrock. Keep on going. And you said last week, we were talking about, it's interesting for me, the horizons for grants for physics type activities. And you were saying, if I got this right, 10 years out is like physically impossible. 5 years out, you think it probably is.
You would have to discover something brand new. If a physicist, to recap, people who haven't seen last episode, if you read a grant application from a physicist to the NSF or DARPA or something like that, and they say we're going to do this in 1 year, that means like, yeah, we're probably going to do it. 5 years means like there's nothing physically impossible about doing it. And if they say 10 years, they're like, there are deep problems in physics and we will need absolutely new laws of nature. But hopefully that happens because that's the
Yeah.
10-year time span, right? And
So in sort of AI driven software land, that 10 years is now, yeah, it's probably 2 years realistically. Now, want to caveat all of that. There's some interesting stuff going on depending on how you interpret the latest LLMs out of Anthropic and OpenAI. Things maybe are slowing down a little bit, and I'm not an expert in the kind of in the constraints, but the availability of data, they've consumed a bunch of that data already, so there's arguments to say that maybe some of that stuff is slowing down. Now, we have yet as an industry, a software industry, caught up. We haven't consumed everything they've given us yet. So there's a bunch more. There's a time required for us to kind of consume that and build products around it. And then maybe this is a question for you. We then have to bring those products to market, and they have to be consumable, purchasable, understandable. You're living and breathing that. What are you seeing in terms of customers trying to understand what to do with these things?
yeah, the way people perceive AI is tricky because we talked about intelligence before. Like, I don't think it's so difficult to pin down what do you even mean by intelligence. I think the idea of work makes a lot of sense, and I'll use a personal learning from the last year or two. We brought to market, I think, a systemic way of approaching management that we thought really reduced the complexity and the difficulty of management. But then we started talking about agents. And when we talked about agents, we flipped that around from a cost reduction or a difficulty reduction to one where we said, well, actually, and this is something that AI really pushed us to just be much more bold, and we've been able to deliver on this vision, is like, we're going to deliver agentic managers who are able to do management work for you. And so you might be hiring 3 managers next month or next quarter as part of your budget. Don't do that. Just hire us for a tiny fraction of that overall cost. We'll be able to deliver the management work that you want. And a quote that always stuck in my head for 10, 15 years now is also Paul Cheeseborough, who's the CEO of Tubi. He used to say when he was CTO of News Corp, he's just like, you never tell anyone that technology is going to reduce their costs because no one wants to invest in that. You tell them technology is going to increase the scale and increase your revenue. And if you stick there, and he was a very successful CTO of News Corp and then Dow Jones and News Corp and then Fox. And now he's CEO of a pretty big company. I watched the Super Bowl on Tubi, right? And it's like that mindset is brought up in AI. You can't tell people AI is going to take your job. AI is going to reduce your overhead, or AI is going to. You say no. You have problems, things that are on fire right now, and AI is going to come and be your 12th man.
Yeah, it's sort of do more with less versus take cost out, which is not very compelling.
Well, and just the way people perceive their problems. I was trying to talk about this with my team about how we're presenting our product to the customer, and but I finally, a lot of us have small children on my team. We're kind of a more mature startup in terms of our age of our employees than the people out all night. And so it's like, if you have toddlers run around the house, and this seemed to work, and so we're going to test it on the podcast. If you have toddlers running around the house and somebody comes to you and says, I'm going to have a robot that's going to prevent your toddlers from making a mess, I don't believe that. And that might be possible. Who knows? And on the other hand, if you come in and said, I have a robot that's going to follow behind your toddlers, it's going to go up the stairs, has these little legs, it's going to pick up all the things they drop, and it's going to put them away. It's like, I kind of believe that. I believe that will happen. Now, both of them might be equally easy. Maybe it's actually preventing them the whole time. I just know when I go upstairs, there won't be toys and food and everything all over the floor. The second way, we're saying, well, I'm going to give you more help. Your problems aren't going to go away, but I'm going to give you help to address your problems. It's more of an abundance framing that you're going to have unlimited work, unlimited help. And I think that's...
Can you share with us, I don't know if you're comfortable sharing, what the conversations are like with the customers? This feels like a reaction to something you're experiencing. What's going on in the real world when you're out talking to customers? How are they responding?
Well, when we go to a director of some function and we were talking about, hey, we're going to just structure things differently so that all your problems go away, I think there was an immediate sense of lacking control, or if we even say, hey, you're going to reduce the number of people that you need to hire. When framed in this, hey, we're going to simplify things, I think people are reacting to that loss of agency. On the other hand, one of the places we're working with a lot of companies who want AI-enabled software development. And so that's a big management problem. How do you break apart your software development from the super hard stuff where you don't want an AI working on maybe your product strategy right now? Maybe in 6 months you will, who knows? But there's a phrase in Mexican Spanish called talacha, and I'm using it here very intentionally. Talacha, and it's a Nahuatl word that just means like hoeing. And what we use talacha and is used in Mexico is anytime you have some work that's just like a bunch of just stuff that needs to get done. None of it's extraordinarily hard, right? None of it's that difficult. That's talacha. And when we explain this concept, and I love that word. It's a missing piece of. It's actually not Spanish. It's Nahuatl. It's the native language, and I think it's a missing concept for us in English. And when you tell somebody, hey, you have hard work, and then you have talacha, and the AI can do all of your talacha, it immediately clicks for them. So that's my perception. It doesn't feel like an encroachment on what they care about. It feels like freeing them up from the stuff that they have to worry about, and they just need more people to do that stuff. Yeah, that's what I feel.
And what's the flip side of that? What is there a visceral reaction to not presenting it as talacha? What is the fear? What is the thing that's the neurons that are firing when you don't position it?
Yeah, I think all companies suffer from this idea of building an empire. And that's where a lot of the politics come from. And, when you talk about AI and its ability to work cross-functionally because it can read multiple data systems and it can reduce headcounts and things like that, I think that particular way of it excites people's political neurons and they start firing, and then you lose the momentum on the deal.
What scale of businesses are you working with? Just order of magnitude, number of employees, let's say.
1,000-person
Yeah.
businesses is kind of that scale. Yeah, I mean, once you get real big, but I think every bigger business has those 1,000-person units and that level of politics. Smaller businesses, yeah, they just want to
Yeah,
make money.
we work with smaller, sort of sub 100 at the moment. And we are generally working with the CEO or somebody very senior in the business. And so our conversations are probably a little bit more around, it's probably 50-50 cost reduction. But there's always in the back of the mind, like, look, we can get rid of some of the talacha here. And they're like, that's fantastic. I could take this great person and they could be doing more of that instead of like doing this.
Yeah, and so I think maybe that's like a learning. If you can just be good at segmenting. Every company has fires and every company has stuff that they just wish they had 10 people to take care of, but ends up being on their plate. For us, end of the week, nobody wants to write a report as a project manager of what they did that week. No, I mean, it's like, you could do it right off the bat. And so what we do is we deliver Friday afternoons, around noon, they start firing out. Here's a full summary of everything that's happening, what needs to come next. It's not 100%, but it's like 90% there.
Have you thought about reaching out to the nice folks at Doge? I think they're looking for that feature, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm not ready for that level of politics.
Okay.
Not quite yet.
Okay.
No, but that was the joke you're making though is Elon Musk
Yeah.
reached out to everybody and said,
Yeah.
what are the 5 things you got done this week? I have my critiques of that. You should ask them at the beginning of the week, what are the 5 things you're going to get done? And then quiz
There you
them
go.
at the end. Did they
Yeah.
get done? And actually don't quiz them, quiz somebody else who they were going to do them for. Anyway, that's pack logic.
Yeah.
Now, I think everybody gets that this is coming. But my point is when you tell somebody, I'm going to do the least fun, kind of easy part of your job, they believe the AI can do the easy part. They want the less fun parts of their job. And everybody has 10 things that they wish they could do with themselves. Going back to going to be more aggressive, that if they just didn't have that drudgery. So that's a great place to take it.
Yeah.
And presenting your software as a thing that's going to take over the drudgery, take it away from them, and is super important because you don't want to excite that kind of part of people's brains where they're worried about losing their autonomy, losing their budgets, losing their purpose, their social status is not
Gotcha.
good. And usually if you say I'm going to give you more people, it excites the right part of their brain, which I'm going to grow, I'm going to be bigger, I'm going to be more powerful.
Yep. Okay. Anything this week capture your attention?
Well,
Anything?
let's talk about you brought this up kind of tangentially, but the release of GPT 4.5, which is the first major tick to the point. It was 4.0, and then they had 4.0 with an O, and then 4.01. Anyway, the naming has really kind of like stalled out, and they've been just going hexadecimal on the.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to stay ahead of Anthropic with their 3.5 and their 3.7.
So the 3.7 released, and I also, so the 4.5, I think the headline here is that it is far more expensive. They actually, in the demo, they were calling it chunky, which means fat, the chunky model. It's very expensive to build because it has some number of billions of parameters I didn't check, but it's way bigger than anything else. And that also increases the inference costs. And I think in the wake of DeepSeek in December, when was DeepSeek? Was that January? I don't know when DeepSeek was. Whenever months are losing, it's just what model got
Yeah.
released is the time tick. Everybody realizes that there was huge efficiencies that they unlocked in terms of both training costs and inference costs. And I think 4.5 kind of got caught flat-footed. And so it's a very performant model, but it does seem that it's not that there isn't going to be more scaling on the kind of what they call pre-training, which is being very aggressive about kind of the neural net. And instead they were talking about inference time scaling, which are, after the questions asked, scaling how much effort you put into inference has been the main one. I think both of them are going to continue, but it's going to probably ping pong back and forth in terms of.
Have you had the chance to baseline it all against work you've done prior using older models?
The older models are not constraining us right now. It's mostly about data integration is most of our issues. So we're already at a point where people are happy with the output, and it's much more making sure we have access to the right data than the model. So so our constraint is not even model related at this point.
Well, it's interesting. That's really interesting in and of itself because we haven't had a chance to baseline either of them yet. Because largely they're doing what we need them to do. If everything was 5% better, that would be great. But it's not we're working on things that need to be 80% better, a lot of the time. So
Yeah.
So what are we, 10 days since or not even, maybe a week since they've been launched, and we played around a little bit, but we weren't scrambling to try and to get them in. What did really capture my attention, what I personally spent some time on, was Claude Code, which is essentially a terminal based. For those who don't know, we talked about IDEs before, basically where you write software, and there's a bunch of what we'd call co-pilots. GitHub has one called Copilot, and these are kind of tools that sit along beside you and help you code. Well, Claude came out with this thing, fantastic name, Claude Code, really differentiated there with the naming, but it is more wholly integrated into the IDE. And we can talk about what it can do and what it can't do, but here's the pattern that as a product manager I'm looking for. I'm looking for a situation where I can take my description of what my product needs to be and I give it to a piece of software and it builds it. Now, that actually has existed probably for 6 months now already. And every month it gets a bit better. You can build more complex products. But the problem is, the way we build products as humans is we ask as best we can and be as specific as we can. And we get this software product and we look at it and go, oh, now that I see it, the button's in the wrong place and this is wrong and that's wrong. And so it's quite an iterative process. Maybe that's why we have, Agile and Scrum as well. But the problem with these co-pilots has been that they go off track fairly quickly. The first time you're like, this is fantastic, and then you say, hey, can you tweak that? And they go off that way a little bit, and then they're there, and then they're over there, and then they're over there. But what I saw, just to kind of draw a line under, Claude Code's a lot better, and it also, now you can kind of give it the task when you realize it's going off track. You can then say, actually, hang on a second, we're 5 iterations into it, you veered off this way. Can you now do a run through this to, for efficiency, for example, to reduce latency, or can you realign it? So, talking about where the puck is going, to a place pretty soon here, 12, 24 months, I think, where even an IDE is going to be a not very often used interface. I really do think that we're going to get to a place relatively soon here for 50% of products that aren't that hyper complex that will be using a text-based interaction.
Yeah, I think all of these businesses that are predicated on writing code, either as a moat or if you're a services business, it's lights out. You really do need to start figuring something else out. One addendum, and I know the podcast is called Breakneck, and we're trying to keep the episodes short and to the point, but you can't help, is the idea of open sourcing a lot of the standards for traditional SaaS. So it's like, I used to think, oh man, you could just go build a CRM in a weekend, or someone built a DocuSign clone like last week. And it looks, why not, like, all those people doing like the nth iteration of Bitcoin protocols or whatever, or Ethereum smart contracting or whatever, need to come back and just build a open source CRM modality that people could build off of. I think some of these things might enter, and a lot of people would lose them a lot of money if that happened. But like HR, like instead of building workflows from scratch, having like kind of an open source, this is the right way to, this is what the fundamentals of CRM. I think could be super interesting because it's just like,
that's interesting. Are you imagining it's an actual, let's imagine for a second, an actual written standard that says a HR system in the US must do this, in California there's this tweak, and
yeah, you
wherever
have
else.
you have .csv and you have JSON, or these formats for transmitting text. I think it's just some kind of extension of those to the point where this is an opportunity. The definitions of like opportunity, lead, and all that stuff, for example, in the CRM case, are all kind of static. I mean, that's just changed in 10 or 15 years. So why not just open source that and then have all these, like, nucleate like a AI ecosystem of various CRMs? Because it's the technology necessary to build a CRM is something like that might take minutes even now, weekends. Not it's not a defensible modality.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a conversation for next week.
All right, next week then.
Exactly that.
Ian, great chatting.
You too. See you, Matt.
Bye.